There are a good amount of games within the Big Ten Conference, Big Ten Conference teams that stand out, that could maybe affect the national perception of the Big Ten going forward. And one of the most highly anticipated matchups of the non-conference schedule, Nebraska at Colorado. I cannot wait for this. I think when we look at Nebraska and Colorado right now, I see a game where we don't really, there's a lot of, especially on the Colorado side of things, and some on the Nebraska side of things as well, you see a lot of new faces and new places. You see a lot of taking advantage of the transfer portal. You see a shift over in staffs for the Cornhuskers and the Buffaloes. I think that's something to kind of keep in mind as well. Like right now, we don't know what we're going to get out of Colorado. When you bring in 50 some odd transfers, we've seen nothing like that, folks. We've seen 15 guys, 20 guys, 25 guys, something like that. And we thought that was big time turnover, but Coach Prime and Deion Sanders has just flipped it on its head. He has completely flipped a 1-11 roster. Travis Hunter, one of the most talented defensive backs, maybe one of the most talented players in the country. You look at him, and then you look at the Nebraska passing game, right? You've got Jeff Sims coming in, transfer quarterback. Some people putting some dark horse Heisman odds on his name. I don't know if we don't need to go there yet quite with Jeff Sims, but this is a receiving core for Nebraska I think could be pretty balanced. You look at Marcus Washington is in there, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, Xavier Betts, Billy Kemp looked really good in the spring game, Josh Fleeks. They've got a balanced, good receiving core. I didn't even mention the tight end. So maybe Travis Hunter locking down like a Trey Palmer last year. I don't know if that's going to be as prevalent for Nebraska. This one happens every year. Iowa at Iowa State. Folks, Iowa opens the season against Utah State. It's very simple. The formula is very simple at Kinnick against the Aggies. Light them up. Build confidence on the offensive side of the ball. Build it up. Because the worst thing that could happen for the Iowa Hawkeyes coming out of the gate is a 20-13 win with a defensive touchdown against Utah State. Will that happen? No, I don't think it'll happen. This game against Iowa, or against Iowa State for Iowa, is a chance for the Hawkeyes to prove that they are not only a good football team, but they are a good offense. I don't know what Iowa State's defense is going to look like, but this is a prove-it game for the Hawkeyes. If they come out and they lose 10-17, here we go again. There's going to be questions in Brian Ferentz's office. Minnesota travels to North Carolina, all right? So I think a lot of the hype of this game really depends on what happens between Minnesota and Nebraska in week number 1. Right now, I'm going Gophers in week number 1. I think the Gophers in the early betting lines are the early favorites. They have one of the very best quarterbacks in the country. You look outside of Caleb Williams, who's number 2 at the quarterback position, Heisman Trophy, all that type of stuff. Drake May's right up there. Now, I will say this. You lose your offensive coordinator, right? Phil Longo is now the offensive coordinator at Wisconsin. So there's something to be said about that. And all the success that Phil Longo has had, going back to Sam Howell as well at North Carolina, he's been a big part of their offensive success. This might be the toughest test for the Minnesota defense, especially their secondary, all season long. But on paper, this might seem, well, you got a Heisman candidate at North Carolina. You look at Minnesota's maybe losing the best player that they've ever had in their history. Like, what? Like, you know, of course, North Carolina's at home at Kenan Stadium. Of course, North Carolina's going to win, but slow your roll. Dive into a little bit. North Carolina losing some top receivers. North Carolina 108th in the country last season in defense. They gave up 30 points per game. What if Minnesota makes this a Big Ten game? I think that's the way Minnesota has to approach it. You're never going to fully stop Drake May. I don't think you're ever going to do that. But you got to contain him. You got to control time of possession. Ethan Kaliakmanis can't make mistakes. I think you got to probably run the football pretty well with guys like Sean Tyler and Zach Evans, maybe true freshman Darius Taylor, maybe Bryce Williams, guys like that. You need to run the football well. You need to make this a Big Ten game. You need to bring your lunch pail to work. You need to say, we're going to control you. We're going to run. We're going to run and we're going to run and we're going to run and we're going to keep the ball out of the hands of the Heisman candidate. We need to play PJ ball. We need to play PJ flag football. That's exactly what needs to happen with Minnesota against North Carolina. It would not surprise me to see Minnesota go on the road to North Carolina and win. I want to say that, and I think that would really boost up the Big Ten. You got to talk about it. Week 4, this is the big one. Ohio State at Notre Dame. 7:30 Eastern, September 23rd on NBC. Who, baby? We're really going to find out where Ohio State is and where Notre Dame is in this football game. Are they both playoff teams? Look what happened a year ago. Notre Dame, even early in the season when Notre Dame experienced the majority of their struggles, Notre Dame gave Ohio State a fight. Nothing was easy for C.J. Stroud and the Buckeyes that night in Columbus. Nothing was easy. When you look at Notre Dame, you bring in Sam Hartman, of course. Notre Dame as well has a good running back in Audric Estime as well. He was a tough runner in that game against Ohio State last season. I am very excited to see the matchup of maybe Audric Estime running against the front seven of Ohio State. I believe Jim Knowles came out and said a week or so ago, we have the potential. We could be the best defense in the country. That defensive line, JT Tuimoloau, you look at Michael Hall Jr., look at Jack Sawyer. How about Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers at linebacker? Like, this is a good group. Ohio State has a really good front seven. I look, kind of like Michigan State, but obviously Ohio State's better. Where's the secondary going to be? I think that's maybe a little bit of a question. We might have those answers. I don't know of a lot of a downfield threat for Notre Dame. We know there's downfield threats for Ohio State. Can Marvin Harrison Jr. continually take the top off the defense? The big thing for me in this game is, can Notre Dame contain these Ohio State wide receivers? That's going to be, I'm going to sound like a broken record this season, because when you face Ohio State, you got to be able to cover. Because you can't blitz. Eventually, your corners are going to be out on an island, and they're going to have to cover the best, potentially the best player in the freaking country in Marvin Harrison Jr. They're going to have to cover a potential first-round draft pick in Emeka Ibuka. You look at Julian Fleming. You look at Xavier Johnson. How about true freshman Carnell Tate? I hate to call games, especially in September, must-wins. But if Ohio State falls in this game, they still got to play Penn State. They still got to play Michigan. They still got to play a tricky game against Wisconsin on the road in the middle of the year. I don't want to say they lose this game and they're out of the playoff, but remember, they have to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think the best case for them is to go undefeated going into that Michigan game, and we'll see what happens in terms of playoff positioning is. But this is going to be an absolute banger of a game between Notre Dame and Ohio State. I'm so excited to possibly see this game. How good is Kyle McCord? We're going to find that out in this football game.